In today's video, we're going to take a look at 12 of the best horror games you absolutely need to play. From psychological horror that messes with your mind, to survival horror where every bullet matters, these games deliver some of the most intense and unforgettable moments in gaming. But before we dive into the list, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel for more gaming videos like this, and leave a comment below telling me what the scariest game you have ever played is. Alien Isolation. Few games have managed to create tension as effectively as Alien Isolation. Set in the universe of the legendary sci-fi horror film Alien, the game follows Amanda Ripley as she searches for answers about her missing mother aboard a massive space station. The most terrifying aspect of this game is the alien itself. Unlike most enemies in video games, the alien cannot be easily killed and is controlled by an advanced AI system. It constantly adapts to your behavior and learns from your actions. If you hide in lockers too often, it may start checking them. If you run a lot, it will begin tracking your noise. Because of this dynamic AI, every encounter feels unpredictable. You might spend several minutes slowly crawling through vents or hiding under desks while listening to the alien moving in the vents above you. The sound design plays a huge role in building tension, especially when you hear the creature's footsteps getting closer. The game perfectly captures the feeling of being hunted by something unstoppable, making it one of the most intense survival horror experiences ever created. The Mortuary Assistant. The Mortuary Assistant is a unique horror game that focuses heavily on atmosphere and realism. Instead of exploring a haunted mansion or fighting monsters, you play as a new employee working the night shift at a mortuary. Your job is to prepare dead bodies for burial by performing embalming procedures. At first, the job seems normal, but strange things quickly begin happening. Lights flicker, doors slam shut, and disturbing noises echo through the empty hallways. Sometimes you might see shadows moving in the corner of your vision, or notice that one of the bodies has slightly changed position. The game cleverly mixes realistic tasks with supernatural horror. While you're performing embalming procedures step by step, paranormal events slowly escalate around you. Eventually, you must determine which body is possessed by a demon while trying to survive terrifying hallucinations and supernatural attacks. Because the game is set in such a realistic environment, the horror feels extremely personal and unsettling. Outlast. Outlast is one of the most famous survival horror games of the modern era. You play as investigative journalist Miles Upshur, who receives an anonymous tip about horrific experiments being conducted inside Mount Massive Asylum. Armed only with a camcorder, you enter the abandoned psychiatric hospital to uncover the truth. However, the situation quickly spirals out of control when you realize the facility is filled with violent and unstable inmates. One of the most iconic mechanics in Outlast is the night vision camera. Many areas of the asylum are completely dark, forcing you to use the camera's night vision mode to see anything at all. The problem is that the camera uses batteries, which means you constantly need to search for replacements. Since you have no weapons, the only way to survive is to hide under beds, inside lockers, or run away from enemies. This helplessness creates incredibly intense chase sequences where players desperately try to escape while hearing their pursuers screaming behind them. Little Nightmares. Little Nightmares delivers a completely different kind of horror experience. Instead of realistic environments, the game features a dark, surreal world that looks like a twisted fairy tale. You play as a small child named Six who is trapped in a mysterious floating structure known as the Maw. This strange place is filled with grotesque creatures and disturbing characters that seem far larger and more powerful than you. Because your character is so small and vulnerable, the game constantly makes you feel helpless. You must solve puzzles, sneak past enemies, and escape terrifying situations using only your intelligence and quick reflexes. The visual design and eerie soundtrack create a haunting atmosphere that sticks with players long after they finish the game. PT was only released as a playable teaser, it managed to leave a massive impact on the horror genre. The demo was originally released on the PlayStation Store without much explanation, and many players didn't even realize it was connected to the canceled Silent Hills project until they completed the mysterious puzzle at the end. What makes PT so effective is its simplicity. The entire experience takes place in a small hallway inside a normal-looking house. Players repeatedly walk through the same corridor, but every loop introduces subtle changes that slowly build tension. Sometimes a door opens slightly, sometimes the lighting changes, and sometimes disturbing sounds echo through the hallway. One of the most terrifying elements of the game is the ghostly figure known as Lisa. She appears randomly throughout the experience, sometimes standing silently behind the player or watching from a distance. The unpredictability of these encounters keeps players constantly on edge because you never know when something horrifying might happen. The sound design also plays a huge role in creating fear. Crying noises, radio broadcasts, distant footsteps, and disturbing whispers create an atmosphere that feels deeply unsettling. The game proves that horror doesn't always need monsters chasing you. Sometimes the fear of what might happen is even more powerful. Despite being removed from digital stores years ago, PT is still remembered as one of the most influential horror experiences ever created. Many modern horror games have taken inspiration from its design, especially the idea of creating terror through subtle environmental changes and psychological tension rather than constant action. The Forest. The Forest combines survival gameplay with horror in a way that feels incredibly immersive. After surviving a plane crash, you find yourself stranded in a dense forest with your young son missing. At first, the island seems peaceful, but it doesn't take long to realize you are not alone. Strange cannibalistic tribes inhabit the forest and watch your movements from the shadows. During the day, you gather resources, build shelters, and craft weapons. But at night, the atmosphere becomes terrifying as enemies begin attacking your base. The AI behavior of the cannibals makes them feel disturbingly realistic. Sometimes they simply watch you from a distance, while other times they attack in groups. Silent Hill 2. Silent Hill 2 is often considered a masterpiece not just in horror games, but in storytelling across the entire gaming industry. The game follows James Sunderland, a man who receives a mysterious letter from his deceased wife asking him to meet her in the town of Silent Hill. When James arrives, the town is covered in thick fog and completely abandoned. As he explores the empty streets, he begins encountering strange creatures and other characters who seem to be dealing with their own personal struggles and traumas. What makes Silent Hill 2 so powerful is how it uses horror as a way to explore deeper emotional themes such as guilt, grief, loneliness, and psychological trauma. Many of the monsters in the game are symbolic representations of James's inner struggles rather than just random enemies. One of the most iconic creatures in the game is Pyramid Head, a terrifying figure that slowly stalks the player throughout the story. Unlike traditional villains, Pyramid Head represents punishment and guilt, making every encounter with him feel symbolic and disturbing. The game's atmosphere is also unforgettable. The thick fog, empty streets, and eerie sound design create a constant sense of isolation. Instead of relying on frequent jump scares, the game builds fear through atmosphere and a psychological tension. Another major reason Silent Hill 2 is so respected is its emotional narrative. As the story unfolds, players slowly discover the truth about James, his wife Mary, and the reason he came to Silent Hill in the first place. The ending reveals a deeply tragic story that many players still remember years later. Because of its incredible storytelling, disturbing atmosphere, and psychological depth, Silent Hill 2 is often considered one of the greatest horror games ever created and a defining title in the survival horror genre.
That's what I keep telling myself.
SOMA. This game is a masterpiece of psychological horror and storytelling. Created by the developers behind Amnesia, The Dark Descent, SOMA takes players to an underwater research facility known as Pathos 2. After a mysterious accident, the protagonist wakes up in this facility with no idea how he got there or what happened to the world above. As you explore the dark, flooded corridors of the station, you begin to encounter strange robotic creatures and corrupted machines that behave almost like living beings. These enemies are disturbing and unpredictable, forcing you to hide and avoid confrontation most of the time. However, the real horror in SOMA doesn't come from monsters. It comes from the story. The game explores deep philosophical questions about consciousness, identity, and what it means to truly be human. As the narrative unfolds, players discover disturbing truths about the nature of the facility and the fate of humanity. By the end of the game, the emotional and psychological impact hits much harder than any jump scare could. It's the kind of horror experience that stays in your mind long after the credits roll. Phasmophobia. This cooperative ghost hunting horror game became incredibly popular because of how immersive and unpredictable it feels. In Phasmophobia, you and up to 3 other players take on the role of paranormal investigators who enter haunted locations such as houses, schools, prisons, and even campsites. Your objective is not to eliminate the ghost, but to figure out what type of spirit is haunting the location by using various ghost hunting tools like EMF readers, thermometers, spirit boxes, motion sensors, and cameras. One of the most terrifying mechanics in the game is the voice recognition system. The ghost can actually hear your microphone and react to what you say. If you call its name or ask questions through the spirit box, it might respond or get angry. This creates incredibly tense moments where players start whispering or panicking while hiding in closets or behind furniture. The game also features a sanity system that slowly decreases as you spend time in the dark or encounter paranormal activity. Once your sanity drops too low, the ghost becomes more aggressive and begins hunting players. During these hunts, the lights go out, doors lock, and the ghost begins roaming the house looking for someone to kill. The panic that happens when a hunt starts is what makes this game unforgettable, especially when playing with friends. Dead Space. Dead Space is a legendary survival horror game set in the cold emptiness of space. You play as engineer Isaac Clarke, who travels to a massive mining spaceship called the USG Shimura to investigate a distress signal. Once aboard the ship, Isaac discovers that the crew has been slaughtered by horrific mutated creatures known as necromorphs. These monsters are incredibly aggressive and difficult to kill. Unlike most shooters where you aim for the head, Dead Space introduces a unique mechanic where players must dismember enemy limbs to defeat them. This makes combat more strategic and terrifying at the same time. Combined with the game's dark environments, disturbing sound design, and constant feeling of isolation, Dead Space remains one of the best horror experiences ever made. Amnesia, The Dark Descent. Amnesia is widely considered one of the most influential horror games ever made. The game begins with the main character waking up in a mysterious castle with no memory of who he is or how he got there. As players explore the castle's dark corridors, they slowly uncover fragments of the protagonist's past while encountering terrifying creatures lurking in the shadows. Unlike most horror games, Amnesia focuses heavily on psychological mechanics rather than combat. One of the most unique systems in the game is the sanity mechanic. If the player stays in darkness for too long or looks directly at monsters, the character begins losing sanity. This causes disturbing visual effects, strange sounds, and makes it harder to stay alive. This system forces players to balance hiding in darkness with keeping enough light sources nearby. The constant feeling of vulnerability combined with the eerie atmosphere makes Amnesia one of the scariest games ever created. Resident Evil 7 Biohazard. Resident Evil 7 marked a huge transformation for the famous Resident Evil series. Instead of the traditional third-person perspective, the game switched to first-person gameplay, making the horror much more immersive. You play as Ethan Winters, A man searching for his missing wife in a decaying plantation house located in rural Louisiana. Soon after arriving, he becomes trapped inside the house with the terrifying Baker family. Each member of the Baker family behaves differently and stalks the player throughout the environment, creating constant tension. The narrow hallways, dark rooms, and disturbing imagery make the experience deeply unsettling. These were some of the scariest horror games ever created. Whether you enjoy psychological horror, survival horror, or multiplayer ghost hunting, there's something here that will definitely keep you awake at night. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more gaming content.